call the meeting to order. Aaron, would you do the roll call?
Mehring.
Yes.
Dashlet.
Here.
Boer.
Here.
Lautenbach.
Yes.
Swedberg.
Yes.
Meverden is excused. Pavic is not here at this time. Schmidt.
Here.
Okay, this meeting is in compliance with the open meeting law. Could I get a motion to approve the agenda as submitted or make changes?
So moved. Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the agenda is approved as submitted. Approval of the meeting minutes to the January 17th meeting.
Just to, did you do the compliance with open
Yes.
meeting? Yes. Okay. Foggy head. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe we should check his glass.
Okay. Okay, so we have a motion and a second for the minutes.
Nope. I need a motion to approve the meeting minutes from January 17th, 2023.
I did that. Yeah.
Steve made a
Okay.
motion.
Seconded by
I did.
Second.
Midge.
Okay.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the minutes are approved as submitted. Okay, consideration of bills. Did everybody get a chance to look at the bills that were in the packet? Okay, could I get a motion to approve the payment of those bills unless there are some questions on them?
Motion to pay the bills?
Make the motion. Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Second. Okay, and would you do a roll call, Aaron?
Schmidt.
Yes.
Dashlet.
Yes.
Mehring.
Yes.
Lautenbach.
Yes.
Boer.
Yes.
Swedberg.
Yes.
Okay. Motion carries. Public comment, there is,
I have a couple things for public comment.
Okay.
Just, otherwise this would usually go under the administrator's report or comments
Okay.
after. We don't have that on this agenda. So just real quick, on the 2nd of March, we will be hosting a public information meeting for the Breakwater Harbor update. Originally that was gonna be on the 23rd of February, but it has been pushed back to Thursday, March 2nd. That will be here at City Hall at 6:30. And then there will be 2 public information meetings for the public safety building. The referendum question that's gonna be on the ballot in April. Those meetings are March 7th at
6 to 8 o'clock.
6 to 8 at the Performing Arts Center in the elementary school, and on March 29th. That's all I have. Thank you.
okay.
Will these, all of them, any of them be videoed? Do we know? Have we?
That's, I think the March 2nd, we will try to have that recorded
Okay.
and put out there. So what they are doing is the Chicago District Corps will be bringing, they were supposed to be here the 23rd this Wednesday and they had to cancel because their draft isn't complete. They need a little more time, but they will be bringing a draft of what this project is gonna look like, for the public to make comment on. The 7th and the 29th
Ninth.
for the public safety building, for the proposed fire department, that will not be videotaped. You have those 2 dates to come there, or they can call City Hall with any questions, myself or the fire chief, and we will get those answered for anybody that can't make.
Does it make sense to record one of them?
It's kind of hard to do it. Me and Amber talked about it. We recorded one last year. It's kind of tough to do because we have to use all of their equipment over there, and it's just not being familiar with it. What we were able to record last year was tough to do. So that's why we had decided not to do it. I understand not everybody can make a 6 to 8 o'clock meeting. One is on a Tuesday, one is on a Wednesday, I believe. And we got to, right into Lent here too as well. Wednesdays aren't real good. But, I will take any question. If anybody has comments or questions outside of not being able to attend one of those meetings, we will, sit them down here and go through what we can as
Okay.
well.
Is Gus, Randy, is Bayland doing another little snippet like they did last year?
Bayland will have a video put together, that is correct.
All right, well, maybe then we put that up on the city
As
site.
soon as we have that from Bayland, we will be doing that as well.
Okay.
Got one question. Will the firehouse be available for people that want to see it again that say they don't? they don't believe we need it, that they could come, and who do they contact, you or Matt, or?
Be set something up with through City
Okay.
Hall or directly with the
Okay,
fire
so if
chief.
anybody says that they don't believe it, they can contact one of the two?
Yep,
Okay.
yep.
Okay. Anything else under that subject right now? Not, then we're moving on to the Perry Park playground equipment?
Casey, are you
Yeah.
gonna take that, or do you want me to, or?
Go ahead.
I wasn't at your last meeting, so I'm gonna let you.
Okay.
Do you need it?
Yeah.
He's coming up by you.
So, the Park and Rec Committee recommended that, this would be what we go with for replacing the current playground equipment that's there. It varies a little bit from the picture, so it's on the front, the colored copy. They weren't able to give me a new one. But basically, the main system is the same. Being that our swings aren't compliant, we're gonna go, instead of using a 3-bay swing, we'll go the 4-bay swing. And then there's also a movement piece, which is a hand crank device and charge a battery, and it's a big, kind of like a big self-powered video game. The second page is just an overview. There is some equipment there that we're gonna have to move temporarily, and there's some that's just gonna be gone. So basically, that big structure, that's gonna be dismantled and scrapped. But like, there's a swing there that was donated by Eberts, that's not getting touched, that's staying. There's a climber that we're gonna have to move, which already, it kinda heaved already, so we're gonna have to bust some concrete out the bottom either way, so we're gonna pull that, and then 2 swinger pieces and we'll come back later. But the total for that came to right around $168,000 for basically and that's them installing it. It's something that I feel our crews probably will not have time for, and to ensure that's done correctly, that they do it. So it was a recommendation of the Park and Rec Committee to go ahead with what's pictured.
What's the lifetime of this stuff?
They're warranted, parts warranties is 20 years. So all those parts, even like you see like just kind of like a rope deal on the one end, all those parts are warranted for 20 years. And right now, our playground equipment there, from what I know, is just over 20 years old, but that was all installed in-house. And it's all kind of heaving, so I'm hoping this way we can kind of correct that issue, and hopefully it won't shift as much as the one that's there now currently did.
Does anyone else have any questions about the project? Yeah, I'm happy to see something like this happen. The park really could use the update, so I'm happy with that. So, do we need to do a motion to approve it, or is it already in the budget too?
What do you need?
It's in the budget, we had upped it a little bit, but we're looking for a motion to go ahead and purchase it, so we can get it
Yes.
installed by May or June. Their springtime or our springtime.
So you need a motion to go ahead and order it?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Okay, was there a second to the motion? Kevin, you
Yes.
said it? Okay, did you get the motion on the second?
I'm sorry, could you repeat who
Motion
motioned?
by John Pavick, second by Kevin Schmidt.
Motion is to go ahead with the purchase of the playground equipment.
And Amber, this is in capital budget?
We do have some funds in capital, yes.
Okay, so Pavic made a motion to proceed with the purchase. That motion was seconded by Schmidt.
Yeah. Okay, do you want to do a roll call on it, or do we not need?
It's up
Okay,
to you.
Let's do a roll call on the parks.
Pavic,
Yes.
Schmidt,
Yes.
Swedberg,
Yes.
Boer,
Yes.
Dashlet,
Yes.
Mehring,
Yes.
Lautenbach.
Yes.
Okay, the motion carries. Okay, into new business, the Peterson Park Little League project.
Yes, so we were approached by one of the, I guess, managers or one of the adults that take care of a lot of the Little League projects that happen June, July, and August, and I think extends out there even more than those days, that run the Little League programs here in the city, both boys and girls. They have their own fund outside of city budgets that they have their own programs. They, raise money to get their own uniforms, their own, and they approached the Parks Committee asking if they would come up with the money if they could do some things. One of them was moving the fence at one of the fields out at Peterson Park to make it more in compliance to where it should be. Building a shed to keep their stuff into a shed, pouring some concrete for their batting cages, removing, I think taking them down, pouring concrete and putting their batting cages up. And they sent out a letter to business owners throughout the city looking for funding to procure these items, these things. And they had a gentleman, Mr. Fulweiler here with the city of, from the city of Algoma. They were looking for $30,000, and he came back to the Little League and said that he would like to do the whole $30,000. With a caveat that he would like to be recognized on the sign that it would say Peterson Park, home of Fulweiler Fields. So that's why this is on the agenda. The city wouldn't be spending any money. Part of this $30,000 to procure that new sign, he is willing to take on that expense to do that and allow the Little League then to move forward on doing these projects is what we're looking for. But I want the council to understand that Peterson Park, the current sign that's there today, would now say Peterson Park, home of Fulweiler Fields. So, it is a city park, so I think the council should, make a recommendation that should go on the minutes on record that if the council so chooses to do that, that you would do that tonight.
There was no stipulation when he donated that property on.
The Peterson family, we have nothing on record that can't say anything to that nature.
Okay.
That is a good question, though we have Knutson Hall, it is very spelled out.
Right.
What can and can't be done, and with his funding every year and everything like that, so.
You might want to mention, Matt, like A&W made a huge contribution.
And
I only bring that up because they're now looking for their wish list now that they got their wants, and maybe there's more people. But you might want to acknowledge the great job A&W did, and maybe more people would.
Thank you, and I'm glad you did that, just because, all the businesses in the area received this letter.
Right.
Just because Fulweiler Field gave a big 100% of what their ask was. There still are a lot of other people that still have donated to the program, A&W being one of the bigger ones as well, that have done.
But they have more wants, was my
That is
point,
correct. Yes.
than what they started with.
That is correct.
Yep.
Would Mr. Fulweiler object to an addition of signage underneath other sponsors, A&W, yada, yada, yada? Or team sponsors, or something to that order?
Well, if they take the money, let's say A&W gave $10,000, if they're buying, let's say, sports equipment, they could put a sign up there, by the dugouts or whatever.
Or by the dugouts or something.
I
And then
really,
when they go.
I like to not go that direction, Jake, for the simple fact of, if Matt Murphy donates $5, then should he get his name on the plaque?
Yeah.
Where does the threshold start and stop?
And how big does the sign get?
And where does it end?
Right, and then if you forget somebody that did give
Well,
something, then you have hard feelings too, that they were omitted.
I didn't
And
bring it up
that's
for that reason. But
that's the part with the Fulweiler Fields too. I think most of us know when you drive into Peterson Park, there's the flower bed there and it's got the Peterson Park. He's not looking for it to say, Fulweiler Fields that's just as big as Peterson Park. It
Yeah.
could be something as simple as a plaque that goes on the back of the what is it?
Backstop.
Fence? The back. Thank you.
Backstop.
It could be
Yeah.
plaques that go on the back of the backstop. It's
Yeah.
nothing that
Yeah.
needs to be like we're renaming Peterson Park or anything. That's not the intent of it.
So I'd be looking for a motion from the council if they so choose to move
I would make
these
that motion
projects
that
forward.
They move
Yes.
forward with their projects.
I'll second it.
Okay. And I'd like it to be a roll call so that Terry knows without a doubt that everybody here is feeling the same way about it, so.
Dashlet,
Yes.
Havoc,
Yes.
Four,
Yes.
Mehring,
Yes.
Lautenbach,
Yes.
Swedberg,
Yes.
Schmidt.
Yes.
Okay, motion carried. Okay, then we move on to the budget amendment. So, who is
Go ahead.
doing it? Amber?
So normally we would bring this before you before the end of 2022, but with the CDBG projects, tax season, and everything else that's been going on in the admin offices, it got a little pushed on back burners. Most of the items on here, I was explaining to Councilmember Swedberg this morning that normally this would be a lot longer and there'd be a lot more to it. But I scaled it way back because it is after the fact, so I kind of looked at the things that we pretty much have already talked about in the past. One of the things we did last year was to refinance that unfunded WRS liabilities loan and put it over at the Bank of Luxembourg. So the council really did already take action on it, but this is a formal action to amend the budget so that when we do our financial statements with the auditors, it will reflect these new numbers, so there won't be an oversight. The other thing in general fund that was adjusted was the accommodation tax distribution. Under state law, we have to distribute at least 70%, and our current municipal code says 70% to the chamber for tourism-related expenses. And our accommodations tax came in way higher this past year than we were anticipating. So that adjustment is on here. That's probably one of the few things that we haven't talked about prior. The rescue fund adjustments are all from ARPA-related or COVID-related grants that we received in. The flex grant through the state is pass-through money from the feds, and the same thing with the funding assistance extra payment they gave us, that's also pass-through from the feds. The TID number 2 district is the, I gotta make sure I get this right, the Maritime Point condos that are across from Subway. That is a donor district to TID 1, which is down on the river in the main business district. Any extra revenue that comes in from TID 2 helps pay TID 1's debts. So we did have a little bit of extra tax increment come in this past year for TID 2, so we're transferring it out to TID 1. And then finally, TID 3 is for the newest Bell Harbor condos that is on the southern border of the city off of 42, where she meets 42. He was not scheduled to build that third building until 2023. He built it in 22. So per the developer agreement that has already been approved by council, we have to pay him that money for that third building as he met certain milestones. So this is just adding it to that budget for 22.
Anyone have any questions for Amber on any of this? No? Would you like a motion to approve?
Recommend to council to approve it.
What, I have one question. On the general fund, the 5 million compared to the 4 million, we have $5 million now in our general fund?
No, that's our expenditures for the year. Our budgeted
Okay.
expenditures was 5 million.
So, I mean, $1 million is a lot. We went up $1 million.
Well, $825,000 of that was the WRS unfunded liability loan. Money coming in, we go right back out to pay off the old loan. So we borrow new money, we're paying off the old loan.
Guess I'm gonna have to come and sit in your office for a little while, because I do not understand it.
The actual
I won't
adjustment-
cloud this up here, but I just
Yeah.
don't understand it.
So the actual adjustment to the general fund is $871,977. $825,000 is from that refunding bond.
Yep.
63,000 is extra accommodations taxes that we collected. And then I reduced 2 of them just to make sure we stay under our expenditure restraint program requirements.
I'm curious as to why the utility in lieu of dropped. What's going on there? What's that
Because
based on?
our mill rate wasn't as high as the previous year. And they took some of their, I don't know what the right term is, their capital out of service. So not a lot, it's some. They take an inventory of all of their mains, their meters, everything they use to operate, and there's a value assigned to that. That value is then multiplied by our mill rate, and then that's what they pay us for in lieu taxes. So there was an adjustment to their overall portfolio, I guess.
Okay.
And our mill rate wasn't quite as high as it had been the year prior.
Well, yes, yeah, because of the reevaluation. Yeah.
Well, that's this next year's.
Okay.
We actually added some more mains in, so that big drop in it is going to affect it a little bit, but that'll be what's paid in '23.
Okay. All right. Do you know what they took out of their capital, out of their?
I do not.
I'd be curious as to what those details are. We don't ever see any of those details. And and while $12,000 or $11.5 thousand in the scheme of things is half a lawnmower, that's still a significant drop. And I would like them to actually show us what and where they took stuff out.
So I don't think the numbers are gonna be that big for what they removed. We had overestimated. If you look at prior years, it was climbing little by little, but then it's dropping back off.
Okay.
And that's partly due to that mill rate, and you
Okay.
might not understand fully how they
Okay,
calculate
well,
that all.
even still, they do
Sure.
operate in almost blind to the city council, and they are wholly owned by the city of Algoma. I think they could explain. I don't think that's an unfair ask.
I can get that from Nancy for you all. Yeah, when we were doing the budget numbers for '23, I actually looked a lot closer with it than I have in the past years to try to get a more accurate number. And that was partly because I was so far off.
You bet. Okay.
Okay, does anybody else have any questions on it? Okay, then would you like a motion from the council?
Yes, that'd be to move this to the full council for
Motion to
adoption.
the full council? Would somebody make that motion?
So moved.
Okay. Was there a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor? Say aye. Opposed? Hearing none, that motion is approved. Okay, the fee schedule?
Yes, everybody has this part of their packet or on their devices in front of them. Once a year, we like to bring this to the full council to look at every fee that the city has that we pass on for anything. So if it's noted in red, there has been a change to it on the fee schedule. If anybody wants to look at it, one of the things that was added that was never there before was adopted by the city council to work in the right-of-way permit. I think it's on page 3. You'll see highlighted in a light red or a red color that those fees are now added to the fee schedule that has been adopted as part of the work of the right-of-way. Otherwise, I think everything else is pretty straightforward, but if anybody has any questions, here again, we'd be looking for a motion to move this to council for adoption.
The only real changes is the cemetery, it looks like.
A couple of things of the cemetery, and just so everybody knows, we get an updated fee schedule. We don't physically do any burials out there, so we get an updated fee schedule from Wees Memorial. That's what to reflect what their fees are that we're covering, what we're getting billed.
There is a little bit of admin fee.
That is correct. That is, yes.
So in the cemetery, there's really no fees changing. We're just changing some of the notes because we didn't bump up the dollar amount in the notes when we bumped up the fees last year. And we had, for their overtime charges that they've been doing, we had it marked that any burial scheduled to start after 3 p.m. would incur that cost. And we had one this past fall that went beyond, and they charged us that overtime fee. So we're just changing it to show that anything beyond that, not just starting after.
Peterson Park with use of kitchen, I see that the use of kitchen is striped.
Yes, that is something that we struck out. So you used to be able to rent Peterson Park and the kitchen. We found that, one, we get very little asked to rent it. Two is the Little League programs have all of their candy in there, their soda, they have stuff in the freezer. It becomes a liability on the city if I rent it out to somebody and tell them they can use the kitchen. There's really nothing in the kitchen they can use. You can use tables outside, there's electricity outside, you can plug in Nescos. It's just opening up the kitchen more or less consists of, also doubles as the concession stands for the whole summer programs throughout the year. It just doesn't work real well. It's just easier to say, you have electricity outside, you have access to the bathrooms, you can use the whole park. We just are no longer gonna allow the kitchen. It's just too much of a liability of, there's too many things in there.
Couldn't we just refer it to a concession? And then
Correct.
you get worried and say, no, the concession is not included.
Not available to rent.
Because really, well, you have a store and a refrigerator and a sink, but that's for the concession.
Yes. Otherwise, we have to go in there, take out all of their stuff, we have to secure it somewhere, or have them do it, and then bring it all back in there. It's just, the little bit of ask we get, it's just, I think, a lot easier to not recommend that you get the kitchen. Somebody wants to have Nescos or Sloppy Joes or hot dogs or whatever, there is still power outside. You just don't get that little kitchen area.
Okay.
Okay, can we get a motion to,
I'll make a motion to recommend it to council.
okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the fee schedule is sent to the full council then, okay. Next item, and the police department scheduling review.
Yes, I'm gonna let the chief kick this off, and then, we will go from there.
Okay,
So, good afternoon, everyone. There were a lot of schedules that were supplied, and just kind of catch everybody up. So this was put back on the PTP to give you guys recognition, which they did. And they asked for a couple additional, they released one schedule and a bunch of notes before the street packets that you have in front of you. The schedules can be kind of confusing, and we can go through those, but ultimately, it's kind of germane because some schedule people, it's half a dozen of one, 6 of the other. It comes down, if you have this sheet here that has staffing issues, it's easier if we actually talk shifts versus actual looking at individual schedules. So you said schedule, we're talking about schedule, that's easy to do. So just some kind of constraints that we have as a department operating. We have a collective bargaining unit that we have with the union guys, and based on that, they work 6 consecutive days with 3 consecutive days off. And there's certain shifts that they can work based on that contract, 7 a.m. to 3 p.m., 3 to 11, 11 to 7, 11 a.m. to 7 p.m., 7 p.m. to 3 a.m. Further contract, that's all they can work. So we have to base the schedules on those shifts. Does that make sense? If I'm going too fast, please let me know. This is a lot of information I'm throwing at you. So based on that 6 and 3 rotation, they don't work a traditional 5 and 2 like everybody else does. Based on that 6 and 3 rotation, based on how it falls in that calendar year, a full-time employee of the police department works somewhere between 242 shifts to 245 shifts. Based on 4 officers working at full-time shifts, we have a shortfall for 120 shifts, and 33 of those are on the weekends. It's based on that rotating 6 and 3 schedule. Then we have to talk about PTO, paid time off, right? So this is the stuff that we typically, you really can't plan for. You can plan when you have that, but when it hits, right? It doesn't really, we have to adjust the schedule to make it happen. So for vacation, for the total department, you're looking at 75 shifts for everybody in the police department. Holidays, you're looking at 50 shifts. For military, you're talking 30 shifts, and for training, you're talking 50 shifts. So that comes out to a grand total of 170 open shifts, not counting the other 120. And what we did, when we sat down, did this last time, we the council, me and Amber sat down, and we tried to figure out what is the average overtime for the officers by taking all the overtime salaries and averaging them out, which I think came to $47.06. So based on those open shifts, just the 170, not the other ones, just the PTO time, we're looking at an overtime cost of $64,001.60 per day, which is currently not budgeted. So not counting chief, if you add up all the hours, you're looking at 290 shifts within the year. Now, I have to caveat that because that does not include like if officers go to court, get overtime, the officer stays late for investigation, or if he has to take someone to Winnebago and it turns into a big long deal in the hospital there, that's not included in that. This is just the PTO that we have forecast. Okay? And it does not include if someone gets surplus or if someone gets a sick day off. In the past, how do we cover that? We use part-time officers, which I love because they're a lot cheaper than a full-time officer, and myself to cover down the shifts. The part-time, and I think everybody's pretty much here for the last week, probably have part-time personnel's dynamics and aging of the workforce. We really have a hard time finding and tracking and keeping part-time personnel. Unlike when Lee was on the police department, when they had like 6 or 7 or 8 part-time people, we get one and we're lucky if we keep them 3 to 4 5 months. It turns into a revolving door. We hire them, we spend 14 grand, we train them, equipment, get them ready, and they're here for 2 months and they get hired out to some other place. Like our last 2 this past year. So where are we kind of sitting now? Currently, we have no part-time personnel. The last 2 did get hired. One went to Kewaunee PD full-time, the other one went to Door County Sheriff's Department. Currently, I'm the only one that can adjust my schedule, which I do to kind of cover down shifts that doesn't impact overtime. I'm a kind of a 3D patch kind of guy. Plug me in the dam and I'll plug the hole for a while until we get somebody to come and cover shifts. Bad news of the chief is having scheduled me, if you want to put me on a 63, which we can definitely do, it limits my ability to cover down overtime. So if I'm working that shift, I can't really work the second shift right after that, so I'm also sick. Overtime is bad because 2 reasons. Number 1, it's expensive. It really, really is expensive. But number 2, and ultimately it leads to burnout and the fatigue of the personnel. And that can lead to other issues within the community itself. You know, longevity officer, do they want to stay here and not move on? Or, you know, do they get tired and are they liability to the city itself working the streets? So lots of overtime is not a good thing for those 2 reasons. Then last year, I just put in here because somebody asked me during PPP what the average, so I averaged roughly 50.3 hours per week of paid time to break us down there from holiday, military hours work, 6 vacation, and the grand total. And the last piece that was asked to bring up to council was the SRO issue, which we can also talk about. As I explained to the PPP, it helps, but it does not solve the problem of our staffing. It helps for 3 months, but not the rest of the year. And you should have had in your packet one calendar that had a pink on it. And I did that to show, like, for 2 months, if we had SRO in school, how would we kind of schedule that? The negative part of that is that where it's pink, who's covering that as the chief. So I mean, it doesn't really solve our staffing issue, if that makes sense. So those are the kind of the takeaways. When you look at the schedules, you put them back to your mind and use that as a reserve of information. If you want, you can kind of, I know these schedules are kind of confusing. Matt, I don't know if you want to take the ball by the horns at that point, kind of direct it from there.
Yeah, and if you just give me a second here, little small technical problem, January. I just want to pull up on the big screen and I'm going to kind of get up there. Everybody has some hand drafted that myself and the clerk put together. Everybody has one of those in front of them. And I'm going to just kind of walk everybody through. And maybe it's easier to kind of see what's going on if we take, what we did is we took everybody's time cards of actual shifts worked in 2022, starting on January 1. And everybody has this in front of them, but I'm going to pull it up. And if you go all the way over to the left, you'll see where I have a little mistake in here, and I want to just explain this a little bit. Randy's a full-time officer, the chief in January of 2022. Cody is Brad. In January of 2022, I have Tanner's name and Ann's name written in here. They are part-time officers at this time. But then down below that, Ron is still a full-time working for the city, and Clayton is a full-time working for the city. So as we're kind of walking through this, it's going to be a little confusing, and I apologize if I'm standing in anybody's way over there. It's a little confusing of who is part-time and who is full-time. But you can see in January where there's a line struck all the way across Cody. Cody's out on a military assignment at this time. So you can kind of see where we're covering all of our shifts, first, second, third, you know. But remember now we're using Ann as a part-time officer to cover these shifts. So, you know, we have a first shift, a second shift, a third shift. anywhere where you see in one day, you know, here's Saturday the 1st of January, that's covered. That's covered, and you can see, walk all the way through the month of January, where you can see we don't have a lot of problems. But we also have Ann working part-time, and we have Tanner working part-time, and look at the shifts that they're covering. Anywhere where you see this part-time and there's 3, 3, 3, 3, the days that they're working as part-time, we're able to cover down those shifts. And to date yet, we still don't have anybody in the SRO position. That's not discussed yet in January, right? You get into February, you can kind of see, here what's going on in February. Not a lot of problems, very little. Is there any overtime? If you see a 1, 2, or a 3 and there's a big blue dot right next to it, or a black dot probably on your paper, that is somebody that worked a 12-hour shift. That could have been, they were held over for something, there was an issue that they had to stay at work, right? So that is overtime that we don't have control over. That's just something that happened, that officer had to stay on and deal with it, all right? And you'll see February is kind of the same thing. What is highlighted here in yellow that I'm showing you is, those are, that the chief is coming in, the chief is working 5 days on, 2 days off. So where it's highlighted in yellow, and you can see here in the month of January, 4 days, a Saturday and a Sunday and a Saturday and Sunday, that the chief came in outside of his assignment to cover shifts that needed to be worked, right? And you can see the same thing in February. There's 2 of them here that are worked by the chief. If you scroll down, and you'll start to see the trend turn the other way. Here we're in March now, okay? We still have some part-time. Tanner's working a little bit part-time. Ann is working a lot of part-time. Ron Seidel has not retired yet. You can see, you know, where the military issue comes into play, where there's an M under Randy or Cody, that is, they're on military leave. So everybody knows they're out on military leave. And under Randy's, because Randy doesn't work a scheduled first, second, or third shift, so he has just a W that he puts on his time card, and that's what we're reflecting on here, where you see this W, that is actually the chief is here working, okay? You can see another in March, Saturday and Sunday, where the chief was here covering off shifts. And then he had his long military period here, where he had some days off, he used some military leave. And you can see, where you see the highlighted pinks, okay, the doubled up, that's a first shift and a third shift that was covered down. So both of those officers on March 1st here, you can see March 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, where one officer worked a 12-hour first shift, and one officer worked a 12-hour third shift. Where they're doubled up like that and they're highlighted in pink, we use 2 officers to cover 3 shifts. That's what you see highlighted in pink, all right? So you can see that kind of trend. How many times here, some of it is, yes, covered by part-time. So like right here, we had an officer that's a full-time officer, he's working 12s, and we also had a part-time officer working 12s to cover those shifts, because we have the chief out, we have Cody out. So that's where you see these, we're paying overtime to cover these shifts, all right? And I'll get to where our overtime budget was as soon as I wrap this up. Is this making sense? I'm not going too fast for anybody, okay? Now we get into April, okay? You'll start to see where the SRO appears. Actually, I'm sorry, back up here in March, where the SRO, we're working under a contract with the school district now, just a temporary trial basis with the SRO. We're trying to get them over there. I think we had tried it 2 days a week that we wanted to try to do, but it was when we could. You can see where the days the SRO is, you know, so I have a third shift and a first shift here where the chief is working. We have an SRO, we have a third shift and a first shift officer on that we're covering down with people working extra to cover for this SRO. All right, here you can see we have an SRO on March 25th, where we had an officer working a 12-hour day. We had a part-time employee working a 12-hour day in order to fill this SRO shift. All right, get into April. And you can see where the SRO here on Sunday the 2nd in April, where we had to have a full-time officer on a 12-hour shift, a part-time officer on a 12-hour shift, and then we had the SRO. All right, and then you can kind of see the SRO. I'll take you through this here again. We're showing you the chief is working, you know, outside of his 5-2s. You know, if you're in orange, if there's an orange, that is either a full-time day off. That would be like their 6-3 schedule where their 3 days off would be. All right. And then you can see here where Tanner's not barely working any. He's part-time yet at this time. There's a line here in the month of April. He didn't work at all because he's probably at the time working for the Village of Luxembourg full-time.
Yes.
All right. So, and you can see Ron is still working in April. But now if we go to the next page and we get into May, where you see Ron works the 1st of May, we had a little gathering here for him on that Saturday. Then that was Ron's last day in the office. Randy allowed him to cut out of here. I think Randy covered a little bit of his shift. And then you can see where now Ron's schedule is completely gone, right? It's orange. At this time now, Ann at this time becomes a full-time employee to take Ron Seidel's position. Tanner is starting to work some part-time hours. He has not become, I'm sorry, at this time he did because Clayton is already gone. So Ann took Clayton's position. I apologize, I'm saying it wrong. Ann took Clayton's position when Clayton left the city and went to Door County full-time. Ann was hired full-time. Then now you see Ron drop off the schedule and Tanner's hired full-time and we don't have any part-time. So what you see now up here is what we currently have today. Randy, Cody, Brad, Tanner, and no part-time. So you'll see Ron is retired, those stay orange. Our part-time, we stay pretty vacant here without any part-time here for a month or two. But you can see on the 4th and the 5th where we're paying overtime to Tanner and we're paying overtime to Cody, but we're filling that SRO for the school district trying to make that work, all right? And then you can see other days where there's some people gone or days off where we cover some full-time. So, and then we're in the June, school year's out now, the SRO position is done because there is no school. School's out of session for the year. So, but we also have no Ron, we have no part-time. And that's pretty basic, pretty straightforward. You can see over here where we get towards the end of June, we have the V's are for vacation. We have an employee on vacation, which then causes here the chief, you can see worked a 12-hour day, and you can see Ann worked a 12-hour days to make up that 24-hour shift. All right. So next, we're into July. You'll see a lot of the same, but we have a little bit of part-time back. But our part-time that's coming back, where you see a T2 or a 3 or a T1, those are, they're back. We have some part-time, but they're training. So why do we have a T2 and a 2 up here? That means that our officer is field training with another officer. So in the month of July, we're starting to get some part-time employees, and then we have issues arise. All right. August is a really good month. It's a very busy month here in the city of Algoma, but actually on this paper it looks really good. You get some chaotic days here when you get into the Shanty Days weekend, where you can see everybody kind of covered around to try to make that work. Some different shifts. You'll see a 7P to 3A, kind of a cover shift that the chief had because of that's the Shanty Days weekend. So that's why you see, why is there so many officers on? Boy, there's a lot going on. That's Shanty Days weekend, just to reflect that in 2022. Otherwise, it was really good. Not a whole lot of incidents. You'll see here on Friday, the 5th of August, there's a little period behind the, somebody had a 12-hour day. There was an issue, something that arose that day. That's the reason for the dot behind the number.
I can interrupt real quick.
Go ahead, Randy.
Just for Shanty Days, the city gets reimbursed for that. So anything outside the normal schedule, we actually bill the chambers and they actually do pay us back on that. So that is recouped cost to the city.
No, that payback, I don't know whether this is to Amber, to Aaron, or to you, or Matt. That payback is for the hourly wage, or is that they pay back a total package?
Total package.
The total package.
Are you talking about the SRO now, or?
No, the Shanty Days.
I apologize.
I think
We
it's
base-
$65 an hour. It's
All right,
not
so they're
quite the
paid,
total package. but
not
it's
quite the
close.
total package, but
Yeah.
close,
Yeah.
okay. All
We
right.
track like which officers are extra, then we add it all up and
Okay.
do the math.
When you're saying the full package, you mean insurance,
Insurance
everything?
Yes.
and all
I
of
don't
that
think-
other
I don't
No,
stuff.
think-
that, they tried that once and that was just a mess.
Because
Okay.
for a while there, we weren't billing, and before I got here, I don't think you guys were billing.
No.
Yeah, I don't think you guys did.
And then they tried it one year and that's
Well-
when they went to,
Yeah, well, then.
Yeah,
It
under
was a mess.
previous
Yeah.
administration, they had me billing all different rates. Every year it was a different number.
Yeah,
and-
okay, all
And we
right.
drastically scaled back what they want to. Usually they had tons of people that wish they didn't, so we scaled all that back, tried to make it work for this thing.
All right. So basically then you're doing traffic control and they've got their own security on the ground.
Yes, that was stipulation because I was told we could do security for them, but we're expensive based on our hourly rate, so they want to hire a security company, so we have extra people on just in case we have to take someone to jail or someone's still in the city, and of course, there's a lot of big events. We didn't have it this year, but usually the car show, the parade, the 5K run, where we need a lot of people, and the fire department, Gus, these guys come on, they help us a lot, and we just do a lot of traffic control.
Good.
Okay,
Right, yeah.
all right, so that kind of gets us through August. Aaron, if you'd flip for me, please. We're into September, we have now full-time, you'll see the Ts go, I'm sorry, part-time, you'll see the Ts go away, and it actually is turning into shifts. We don't have a lot of issues, we don't have an SRO officer, where shifts are being covered here on the part-time. Ron is still obviously retired. You know, we're covering down, everything seems to be working. Even with, you get down towards the end of September, we have a long period of vacation from 2 officers is out almost the whole month of September, is almost, the chief is gone for some time, but you can see we're still able to cover some shifts because of our other staff that we have back, right? Get down into October, everything looks pretty good. We do have some part-time help yet. We're able to cover our shifts. We don't have a lot of overtime. You can see those pink dots are starting to go away, and which is a good thing. Flip the page, please. Get into November, all right? In November, you can see where the pink dots are starting to come back a little bit. We still have some part-time help, not much. We have only one part-time officer at this time. You can see very little shifts that were able to be covered by that one officer. Where it really makes a difference is if you get down into the month of December and you see this part-time, this was their last day of work, I think here on the 22nd was their last day of work. We no longer have any part-time staff now. Our one last part-timer, she has taken a full-time position in the city of Kewanee. We do not have part-time coming into January 1st or the end of December, but you can see where the chief's starting to pick up here, because we also have an officer that's out for a long period of time on leave. And then the chief is starting to pick up all of those hours to make up for that. You'll see where we have a first and a third shift, and where that officer has to cover, the chief is now covering those hours. All right? Does anybody have any questions about this or seen it, how it actually, I know Randy presents and we have a sheet of paper with a bunch of 1, 2s, and 3s on it, but what I wanted to show you kind of through this is, it's not a real true date because there are no holidays, there are no vacations. It's just showing in real life, on paper, what everybody should work is what they're able to work, all right? And the reason I wanted to put this together, if nobody has any questions, I'll go back to sit down. The reason I wanted to put this together for everybody and kind of show it is we can cover our shifts, but now if we put an SRO in position and we lose that 3 days a week over to the school district, with our current staff or even hiring another officer, all of those hours that I have somebody at the school, I need to backfill and cover down on the street so it doesn't take up overtime. All right? So where I'm going with this is we can hire an SRO and we can hire a 6th officer. I believe that we need to look at hiring a 6th officer just to cover our shifts and not to continue to spend the money training part-time employees in order for them to be trained here in Algoma and go leave somewhere else. We need to figure out how we're going to staff that with a full-time employee. But then we enter into the SRO, it puts us right back to where we currently are to date with the staff that we have today without that officer, because what I'm gaining by that full-time officer, I'm giving one of our other guys to the school district.
Well, yeah, it sounds like you're making an excellent case that the police department ideally should be 7 officers, not 6.
If we wanted to enter into the school district's contract and provide them 24 hours of service throughout the school year, theoretically what we would need to do is hire a 7th officer to make that work.
Or 4 part-time officers.
The problem with the part-time is though, is we're getting
Right.
graduated from NWTC, Randy goes over, recruits them, they come over here, we put our officers on a training assignment, we train them up. They don't go to school to work part-time, they go to school for full-time jobs, and there are so many openings right now, they just don't stay here, and you can't blame them for not staying here.
Nope.
They're looking for full-time work.
I mean, currently right now, both counties, Dorr and Kewanee are looking to hire. I think Sturgeon hiring right now. Everybody's hiring in Green Bay, I think sort of like 10 officers or something like that right now. Everybody is hiring, and that's absolutely right. We went through these numbers last time, and there's actually a lot of cost involved. I can go pull the numbers, but it's roughly $14,000 to take someone, hire them, do their background check, get them equipped, gun, belt, uniform, put them on training, sit with Brad Temple on a bus car for 15 months, get them certified, and that money is spent before they actually start working shifts by themselves. So there's a capital investment we put into that part-time employee, where years ago when, like, I keep using Lee, sorry Lee, you know, we lived in the community, he didn't go anywhere, we had him accessible anytime we needed him. Today's day and age, we're pulling kids in from Green Bay other places, because that's where the applicants are at. And like Matt said, you know, great, they get some experience, they love the job, there's openings, I don't blame them, they're gonna put it in for a full-time job. So we lose that capital investment we put into that employee, so we're back to square one. You go to WTC and say, hi, here's my business card, come work for me.
Do we have anything in our contract for a payback in that training? A certain amount of time they need to work for us?
We do not.
No, for part-time, for that is not covered, they're not covered by the contract.
What you're saying, I think, Steve, is,
If
do
you
we?
only work here 6 months, you owe us 14 grand. If you work here a year, you don't. Or-
Yeah. No, we do not. I honestly, Steve, we've never tried it. I don't know if you'd have somebody come and work part-time here if you put something out there like that. I think they'd be like, I can go work 4 other places part-time. I don't think if we put a caveat on there that you have to be here for a year or you
Fix
pay
our
back.
problem anyway, I was just curious.
Yeah. Just to run through the numbers, what I just walked through from January 1 to December 31st, last year, not counting our full-time employees, their wages, in part-time, in police overtime, we budgeted $18,000 and we spent $29,149.56. So we were just over $11,000 over budget in part-time last year. In overtime last year. In part-time, we have budgeted $17,500 and we spent $21,916.70 in part-time wages. We were over $4,416.70. That was in 2022 on the schedule that I just walked everybody through. So where you saw all of those pink squares that were highlighted pink or a dot behind, that was an officer on overtime unless they were a part-time employee. Part-timers don't get overtime. Then they would fall under that part-time category that we were just over $4,400 on part-time.
Part-timers do, but I think it's 40 hours in their work week.
That is correct. They have to extend over 40 hours. That is correct.
But you still have overtime because they have to work holidays and they get paid overtime for working holidays.
Not a part-timer.
Not a part, yes, but not a part-timer.
You gotta tell us the whole story though, because you're still gonna pay overtime for the officers working holidays.
Overtime will not go away,
That's not
okay?
gonna go away.
We will never get our overtime down to 0. It's just like, we can't predict when Mother Nature is gonna snow. We can't predict that there's an incident that happens. A second shift officer works from 3 PM to 11 PM, and at 10:15, there's a problem that causes that officer to be on overtime. Alderman Schmidt is correct. there's holiday pay. We have to, per their contract, union contract, we have to pay them overtime for all of their holidays that they work. Plus, they get another holiday to use. So if you look back on that schedule that everybody has in front of them of all of 22, if you see an H there, that is them using their holiday. So they, let's just say, worked on New Year's Day, they're using that holiday on January 18th or whatever. That would be a normal scheduled day for them to work, but they're using their holiday that they didn't get to use on New Year's Day, all right? Which then could put another officer into overtime, or, you know, how that works is that could cause overtime there as well.
What do we figure in right now for overtime? How do we come up with that number? This is what our budget is.
So every year I sit down with Amber and we kind of gambit based on last year's numbers and the trends we're seeing. And that's how we estimate it. This year, my budget did take a big cut this year, especially in overtime for full-time officers and part-time, because we had a balanced budget, so you guys can have a balanced budget. So I think this year there's only budgeted 10 grand for overtime. That's it. I think we're like almost 50% right now.
So more specifically for my question, if we know we're gonna pay overtime for holiday pay, do we know what that number is, no matter what happens? And do we then guesstimate another amount above that? Because you know you're gonna have more than
So
that, is my
I kind
point.
of look at a 5-year trend and see where it's headed, and then adjust it accordingly from there.
So do we, again, so do we know how many hours of overtime, how many holiday
You
hours we're
should,
gonna
because
work,
your
correct?
schedule, you should be able to add it up, really. You
Right,
should
so
be-
that should be a given number, kind of. So how do we go from there? What do we add to that so that we don't fall into this hole?
So the overtime pay for holiday is half of their hourly rate,
Right?
because they get time and a half for working on a holiday. So the time is covered under the salary, half is their, so if they're getting $30 an hour times 8 hours is 240, so $120 per holiday is gonna be your overtime for holiday.
But my
So you've
point
got
is,
roughly 10 holidays a year, $1,200 a year is holiday overtime. The
Okay.
rest of that overtime is from EM1s or.
sure,
coverage
things that
or-
happen last minute.
Yep.
I get all that.
Things that
I'm
come up.
The
just trying to
holiday
figure out
OT is very
how we come to
small.
that number.
If you look at Steve, the chief also put in everybody's packet, there's a APD staffing issue where it breaks that down, where you see vacation, 75 days, holiday, 50 days. So there's 5 officers, 10 days of vacation. So we know that 50 days of holiday
It's gonna have
is coming down the pipeline,
Yeah.
right? And it breaks it down into military and then training as well, where that's where those 170 open shifts come about. If, just to allude a bit, Randy, and I apologize, the 2023 budget, like Randy said, we have $10,000 budgeted for overtime. To date, we used $4,418.68, with a balance left as of today of $5,581.32. So like the chief said, we are just under 50%. We're at 44.19% of our overtime that we've used today already.
And into it 7 weeks.
And we're into it 7 weeks. Thank you, Jake. Our part-time wages, like you can see what I've showed when I got to the end of December, we have $10,000 budgeted in part-time wages, but we don't have any part-timers, so there remains $10,000 in 2023 in this budget to date, because we don't have any part-time staff.
I guess I'm speculating here because I believe that the SRO is in this day and age is an important component to consider, based on what we're seeing in national news, from small towns to large towns to cities. Is it feasible to take this kind of as a one step at a time sort of deal, where you hire a 6th officer and see if the SRO thing works? I believe that we have a.
How could it?
Well, there may, I don't know. I'm just, what I'm doing is there's a clause in there that says, if this is unworkable, we can bail on this thing. I guess I'm trying to just look for an intermediate step, Lee.
Yeah,
Well,
but
it
they
works
were
in
trying
Kiwanee.
that, and look at the problems they
Yeah.
were having.
Yeah.
I mean, if you add a person and then you take that person away, well, why add a person then? Because you're right back to where you were.
Yeah.
I mean,
You know, it's just, they tried it periodically just to see how it worked, and it just, all it
Still
does is
didn't
just
work,
blow
yeah.
everything up.
And like Lee's saying, if the SRO is great for those 3 months in the summer, we would have that extra officer. But the other 9 months of the year, we're back to those problems.
Yeah.
That's gonna generate a lot of overtime.
Does the SRO have to work for the Algoma City?
No, the county can do your SRO.
Yeah, why don't, I guess what I'm thinking is.
They
why
can't
don't
work
they
for the
hire
school
a security
district.
company guy to be their SRO? You know what I'm saying?
They would either, I think, and you go ahead and answer that question, Randy.
So an SRO officer can be either a county or it can be a city officer or sheriff's.
But he has to be a
That's an
officer.
agreement between, and I can't speak for the sheriff's department, nor I will. That's up to the school to reach out to that organization and say, they like Algoma PD and wanna do that with us. I will say it's, the sheriff's department does have jurisdiction in the city. We do not have jurisdiction in the county. We can do mutual aid. But regardless, the school itself, even the school district covers the part of the county, mainly the city, but part of the county. The school itself does lie within the city itself, so we are obligated regardless to serve the school. So if we get a call, and you'll see me up there, and Cody go up there during the week doing truancy issues and other issues, so we still get called to the school regardless. So we do get a fair amount of calls from the schools. That make sense? You just can't like ignore them saying, oh, it's not our problem. No, it's
No,
not
I
our
get that.
problem.
I'm just trying to figure out how to get them to pay for it.
I just wanna run through, I didn't make a bazillion copies, I felt like I made enough copies for everybody, but I just wanna throw up there on the screen one more thing, and I wanna just walk everybody kinda through this, and you can see where it trends where our issues. What I added to this now is the same thing that you just looked at, but in everywhere where there's a green now, is where the chief is not just working, he's covering a shift because there's there's not coverage, okay? So you can see here where there's 4, where the chief had to work weekends that he isn't scheduled to work, but he's on. Also, those are days that he's covering. And you can see in January where we have part-time, you can see in February, where the chief is covering actually a shift. There's a 2 and a 3 here, but he's covering a first shift. If you scroll up, please, Aaron, or to the next page, you can see now where the SRO comes in, where the chief now is covering, he's not just doing management, he's actually covering a patrol shift. We don't have a first shift officer on, or we don't have a second shift. He's covering a shift. I don't know exactly which one it is. And you can see here in April, there's another 8 days that he's covering. Scroll on, please. Now they're getting bigger. May, here we're getting more. They're up to 12 now, where you can see that he's covering days that he's actually covering a shift. We don't have anybody on first shift. Scroll into July, please. 9 August, things drop off a little bit. Scroll on into September. Now we're back into the school year, but we don't have an SRO. Now we're in the start of this school year here, obviously. 10 in October. Where I really want to get to is where the issue really lies now is we have somebody off for a long period of time, and his days go up to 20, where he becomes a cover down for either first shift, second shift, or third shift. In this case, it was a lot of third shifts that he has covered. So I just wanted to kind of walk that through. This is a kind of a germane number of where he's covering shifts not on duty, but the green is where he's covering shifts. He's not management now, he's covering shifts. Not to say that he's out there running radar for the 8 hours, but he's the only one on duty. All right? So I just wanted to make copies of everything of that for everybody. There's just 6 more sheets of paper, but I wanted to kind of walk everybody through that.
We got a fucking problem.
All right, and I think if I added them up correctly, I think that's 111 days that the chief is covering, a shift through the SRO, through an issue with our current staff and not having any part-time. I think it's 111 days that he was just covering shifts, trying to maybe do some office work or be out in the field, so.
That's out of a, what, 180 day, 190 day work year?
So, the chief's under, out of a 365 days, he
Well,
covered.
no, but what is the standard, you figure, what, 190 days?
A police officer works anywhere between 1,900 hours to 1,940
No, I'm
hours.
just doing days.
Oh,
A 5-day, 2-day weekend would be 260 shifts.
That's
a
200,
year,
okay,
With,
all right.
with no
Okay.
holidays or anything like that.
Yeah.
So
So
220
about
days. Yeah, okay.
So half his shift, or half his year is covering.
Just a little less than half is, he's on the street or he's covering down a first, second, or third shift, or a 12.
But didn't we hire the chief as a working chief, so that should be okay, that's.
Well, I'm just,
half of
I'm
his
just
shift.
laying the facts out there. I'm not saying whether it's right or it's wrong. I'm laying showing you, those are the shifts that he, in 2022, that time period.
Go back to, go to December on this. All right,
Can you blow it up a little bit?
you've got,
Just
you've
December?
got,
No.
he's got covering 20 shifts. Now, look at his W's there and tell me that it's fair to call the chief a working chief when he doesn't have damn near a single day off in the month of December because he is covering shifts. Now, is there anybody in this room that's gonna work 30 or 35 days or in a row?
Yeah, you should work 20 days in a month.
Usually you work 20 days in a month.
If you work a 5-2,
Yeah.
you work 20 days in the month,
And
and the chief worked about 24 that month.
You know, that is not a fair call. Now, I realize that life isn't fair, but, you know, somebody's gonna get burned out here.
Well, I guess my concern is now let's say for instance the 17th, you're on duty days, it says work, right?
I would say you probably did the 12.
And
Must have
then
been
number
12.
one, Cody's on also on first shift.
His,
Some of those shifts, I work third shift and stuff.
It kind of looks like you're doing a 12 over third based
Yeah.
on how everything else
Right.
laid out.
Right.
Oh yeah, there's dots there, correct.
Yeah.
Okay. But and that's just kind of what I was looking at here is, there's some spots that you're on, but then Cody's on also.
Yeah, on this one is because I cover on third shifts and second shifts too. But like what Matt kind of pointed out, the devil's in the details, right? If you go back to this 170, I keep trying to focus on, like military's a great time, me and somebody else are in military, well, if we're both gone military, if there's gonna be overtime because half the department's gone,
Yeah.
right? And let's talk holidays, and Matt brought this up, and it's a great point, that's why I'm gonna restate it, you know? I'm Officer Bill, and I work on a holiday, so you pay me, you know, the holiday pay, plus I got a floating holiday I can take, I go floating holidays. 2 months later, I decide to use that floating holiday. So now you're paying me as PTO, I'm not here, right? Well, now Chief Randy's gotta bring in somebody else for an 8-hour shift to cover that shift, so you're actually, it's not a hit just once, it's a hit twice, if that makes sense. So that's where I always say the devil's in the details, that's why I try to focus on the 170 shifts, because the schedule, how we schedule, that's germane, I can do 50 million different versions of it. Where the devil is that 170 hours of PTO time, plus the 120 hours of open shift, and then the unknowns, right? You know, people get stuck on calls, you get stuck transferred to the hospital, you go across doing whatever, you stuck on investigation, we do the warrant, those are the unknowns.
And I guess is if we'd hire one more person, leave the SRO completely until we get our scheduling straightened out so that we can get back to normal for everybody. Now, you're gonna get your hiccups or people calling sick or vice versa, understandable. But at least try to get you working double shifts and vice versa, and trying to get our scheduling back to normal first before we worry about committing ourselves to an SRO, is what I guess I'm concerned about. Understandable, we need another officer, because you have no part-time.
I mean, it's literally two different issues, that's what
Right.
I'm telling Matt, like, we have a staffing problem, that does not go away if you hire an SRO, we still have a staffing problem, we don't have enough people. You want to do the SRO, we can talk about it, but that means we need to hire somebody else. Because we still, regardless, we still have that shortage we need to take care of your staff.
The only way you're gonna cover it decent is you'd have to hire 2 people.
Or, I mean, if there's the good old days, like when you used to work here, if I got those part-timers to stay, yeah, but that's gone, society's changing.
You don't see that often anymore where people are doing this as a part-time job, you know, possibly moving into a full-time or vice versa,
It's a
you
stepping
know,
stone.
yeah.
It's purely a stepping stone. And like Matt said, I don't blame them. They
No.
go to school, become, to be a full-time officer and have all the benefits.
You spend 2 years or 3 years in
All that money-
TC or wherever it is and get your degree in it, you're not gonna waste your time being part-time the rest of your life.
And ask Kevin, that every sheriff's department's looking for people too.
Yeah, and I mean, it's the whole state.
It's all
I
well,
get a
all
lot
over
of
the country.
letters and emails from like the whole state, and it's, every department has that same problem.
What do you need from us, Matt?
I am looking for a motion to make a recommendation to move forward. Do we want to hire this officer? But then we need to have the conversation of if we hire this officer and we get him hired, or her, I apologize, I'm sorry. If, when we get that person hired, whoever it should be, there's also if we're not gonna go with an SRO, we don't have $46,000 budgeted, so we would have to find that funding.
So what's the total amount of funding you would need if you don't go with the SRO?
I thought we had that officer.
I thought we had that
Yeah.
scheduled.
We have an officer in the budget, a full-time officer. But what we have budgeted, that is in the budget, is that we would be collecting approximately $46,000 from the school district, which if we don't go to the SRO, leaves a $46,000 shortfall to
But
hiring a 6th officer.
Aren't we eliminating the 21,000 of part-time though, right?
We don't have 21,000
Or what do
this
you
year
got for
budgeted in part-time. This year we have budgeted for part-time 10.
So we're gonna go to
It
66.
depends on the details, we'll bring it
But
up
that
again.
10 grand is probably gonna
So-
be your overtime.
We
already have
currently
10
are
grand.
based on
You're gonna have to
having
add
a
it to
6
it.
officer
Add it to it.
budget, minus the 46, whatever it is, from the revenue from the school.
Right.
On top of that, we're already in February, so we haven't spent that money on a full-time officer. And even if you gave me permission today, I need at least 5 months to hire someone to do a background check, train them, and get them all spun up and actually bring them to their own. It's not like I can hire someone to collect tickets and take 2 weeks later on your own. It's
Yeah.
about a 5-month process, to go through that whole background and everything else.
Amber, what does your Ouija board say?
I don't,
Do you do a 12
I
week
haven't looked
FTO
at it.
program?
Can it be done?
Do you do a
we have
12-week
46,000
FTO program
somewhere?
for
She said
3
she
months?
doesn't.
I have to look.
Okay.
My guts tell me
Oh,
you're
2
probably
months.
gonna have to cut something.
And that's the thing, you
You're
end
gonna
up
have to cut a
cutting.
service,
What,
which is what you
so
brought up.
what we would be, and I think what the chief is explaining is, we have some time before we get this person. Obviously, there's training, there's some expenses involved. This year is not, there would be a shortfall. We would have to find some monies this year, because right now we're using a lot of overtime to make up for not having any part-time staff. Even if we rob that $10,000 out of part-time, like I just said, we're 7 weeks into the year and we've used, let's just say 50% of our overtime budget, all right? So there is gonna be a shortfall even with not getting any funding from the district this year.
Didn't last year we have it in the budget, so that would've went in the general fund, whatever we set aside for last year for this officer? Cause I remember we had that in the budget the year before. And we never did
Do you remember his overtime numbers he was
But
giving you?
I'm gonna give you the overtime
Was
numbers
that-
from last year.
You got eaten up?
that.
That's
What was last year's overtime
2022, last year in overtime, we had budgeted $18,000. We spent $29,149.56 with a shortfall in the budget last year in 2022 of $11,149.56.
But we still would've had 50-some thousand in that budget year, that would've got
And we
rolled
also
over
had
to.
an overage from the part-timers.
Your part-time wage was
So
over.
nothing would've got rolled over into the general fund
There-
excess?
I'm not saying nothing got rolled over, but that's
So we
one
could
time
use that.
money.
Monies.
You can't use that for
But we can
ongoing
take it out of our
expenses.
reserves to put it back in this year's budget,
And
can't we?
that's a one-time fix.
Right, for
Correct.
And
this
then the
year.
money's gone.
Yep.
I realize that.
So,
With-
just keep that in your mind, that's all I'm asking.
But the only other option for Randy, even if he went to a 6-on, 3-off, he's still gonna have a shortfall of work.
We can put the chief on a 6-3 schedule, and that is in front of everybody. There's everybody has that in front of them, okay? And I think the chief has it spelled out in his memo. If we put him on a 6-3 schedule, okay, then those are his hours. He is no longer now, unless he's gonna come on his 3 days off, then we're gonna have him working possibly for a 15-day stretch, right? That's the problem with, it doesn't leave him a lot of flexibility
Right.
on that 6-3 schedule. Unless here again, we're just gonna say, work 27 days every month. 25 or, in December, I
We'll
think,
let you sleep
whatever it is. That's the problem with the 6-3 schedule.
5 hours
Well, he
Is-
can
That's
sleep,
it. That's
he
all
can
you
sleep
get.
while he's working, like a fireman.
every other day.
Well, I guess I think the problem is severe enough that I would make a motion that we do seriously need to get a 6th officer, and we're gonna have to find the funds to do it. So I'm throwing a motion on the table that we proceed.
A second.
With no SRO officer then?
Yeah,
Do we wanna make this all one motion? Thank you, Midge.
yeah,
I think
and,
we should
and,
make it-
and just tell the school at this point, thank you, we can't. We don't have,
Staffing problem.
To be honest, and like I
Staff.
said, Jake, that's a great point. It takes me 5 months to get someone on board, so even if you told me today to go hire someone.
School
it'd be
bill.
5
School's
months,
gone,
school would be-
anyway,
This
yeah.
this year would be out.
yeah.
I'm just gonna be honest, I'm not
Yeah.
having the school gets out for this school.
Right.
Randy, when you figured this would work with an SRO, you were banking on part-time help, right? Is that what you were hoping you could find?
There was one with a bunch of pink things on there, and that was
Yeah.
hiring a 6th officer, and it doesn't get away from the problem. 9 months later, we still have the same problem.
Right.
Because all those pink times are filled in by the chief, basically.
Well, how did it work in the beginning was my first, because it was working at one time where we were gonna hire that 6th
Because
officer.
we had part-time people.
That's why we can't now, 'cause we just can't.
We don't
that's
have
our-
any
That's-
part-times.
And that goes back to the conversation we started 2 years ago. The whole problem is we can't get part-time people.
Right.
That's the problem.
Okay.
Well, due to the lack of.
All right, so there's a
full-time
motion and a
officers,
second
they're
on the
going
floor from Jake Casey. Proceed with the 6th officer, find the funding to do so. And anything with the SRO, or are you leaving that off the table because of Randy saying 5
No,
months?
I think we have to put the SRO on hold.
You need to tell the schools.
I wanted, if I can just interject, I did spend some time talking with Jesse over at the school district, because I wanted to let him know now that we put this together and what this looks like, right? And I said to Jesse, I said, I don't know how the council is gonna react, what the council's take is gonna be on this. I know we've been telling you that we're working on this, we're gonna, hiring a 6th officer is gonna get you an SRO, and now we're looking back, it's not. Jesse asked if he could get the 12 weeks to get out of the school year this year, even if he could get an officer 1 day a week. An SRO at the school 1 day a week. I said I would need to talk with the council, I need to talk with the chief, but I said it would be my recommendation, if we can get you 1 day a week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, that would be something that you and the chief could work out, but it would have to be in a schedule that it wouldn't create overtime. Does that make sense?
Do we have that scenario?
And I don't know, I said I need to talk to the chief if we can do that, but then again, it's putting the chief on a cover shift to do that.
You'd almost have to wait till Friday to find out if you had overtime that week to be able to say.
Well, there's the unforeseen overtime that we can't control. Randy can't control. There's something that I'm talking about. Randy's gonna put an officer as an SRO today, but it's gonna make Brad and Tanner work a 12. That I wouldn't be in favor for. But if let's just say Monday we have an SRO because we're gonna try to help the district get through the year, and we don't have to. Jesse asked if it would be possible to do that, just to get them into the end of the year where they could possibly negotiate, maybe go elsewhere, whatever they wanted to do. But now again, even if we made this decision tonight to say we're gonna look at the SRO, like Randy is saying, the chief is saying, is we can't cover that. He can't have by the time we get somebody to cover
Right.
shifts, the school year is over.
Right.
You know, we can't,
Yeah. And there's no way we can do it now because then we'll really be shorthanded.
yeah. So I just wanted to put it out there. Jesse asked me if I would ask. I wanted to, I don't know, let's just say there's 12 of them, 12 weeks left that we would give them 1 day a week. I don't know if the chief could come up with 4 of them maybe that we could do it. Is that worth it or not? But I'm speaking on Jesse's behalf to, that was his concern, that was his take.
If I can do it or not, I'll have to look at the schedules and get back to you.
And-
I'd just rather leave it out and.
Yeah,
make
you're
it
still
clear.
working short
Russ
though
isn't
with-
doing anything during the day, are you?
Every day I am.
Oh, okay, all right.
Easy taking, that's fine.
And you're
When he isn't busy, he's
25
taking a
bucks an
nap.
hour. I'm not working for 20. Better make it.
Are you done with the schedule?
I think so. Does anybody have any scheduling questions? Does that kind of make sense that
And I
everybody
won't
got
work
to?
third shift.
What's Kevin's schedule?
What's Kevin's schedule? He's off every Monday and Tuesday.
Says he's gonna come
Sounds like an SRO to me.
25 bucks an hour, won't work third shift. That sounds good.
Burley probably pays you 30 though.
No, this would be real.
All right, so I have a motion and a second on the floor to proceed with the 6th officer, find the funding to do so, and put the SRO on hold. So when we say that we have to find the funding, are you guys clear on what that means? Are
We'll
we,
look at the budget and bring some
Have to bring
Yeah,
some
give us
options
some
to the
options.
table. We have some
Okay.
time to
They
do
might
it,
come back and
but
say, we just can't do it.
I guess
So-
I want to make the motion clear though. Are we putting, because I have to go to have a conversation with the school district and I don't want to lead them down a path. Are we putting them on hold and we're going to continue to look at this? Or are we looking in this motion to say, we can't do it boots on the ground right now for you?
I think we should tell them we have to solve our own problems
Right, I
first,
agree.
and then we'll revisit yours.
And that's why I want to clean it, because putting the SRO on hold is a little maybe misleading
Yes.
to say, well, are you going to relook at this next month, 3 months? At this time, the city has no moving forward with an SRO.
so could
Yeah,
we
we
say
don't
put
have
the
the
SRO
manpower.
on hold for this school year?
Just, we're not even gonna
We're,
talk about it.
it's off the docket for right
Due
now.
to lack of.
I don't want to put words in any mouth, in anybody's,
Yeah, oh, yeah, we don't have the manpower to do it.
I just want to make that clear, because putting it on hold, I would say, well, okay, next month are you going to talk about it?
Yeah, well,
And-
we've
and-
been putting it on hold
You're gonna
since
hire
August.
seventh officer.
And Gus said no, so, you know, we're.
He's busy.
He's busy. It's that nap time. It's that pesky
Okay,
nap
so
time.
we're gonna put it on, or we're going to find the funding to do so and don't have an SRO program. Okay, so now, my question with that is, you've given, Chief Remiker the authorization to start the hiring process? Or do we need to find the funding for this before we can post for this?
I
or-
think we should find the funding first before you start. I mean, he's gonna have to advertise because it could take 2 months before he gets anybody.
That's a great point. What I'd request is allow me to build an eligibility list.
Right, and then go from
I
there.
think he's gotta start the
From there, at least get
process.
some-
Correct,
Hopefully
because
we
we
can-
could go through this and maybe not have anybody apply.
Right.
We could go through this, maybe have 3 people apply, none of them qualify.
Yeah.
So this could be,
Yes.
you know, the chief is giving you 4 to 5 months, that's best case scenario. It could be 6, 7 months.
I
Yeah, we
think
can't
he's
wait
gotta
for-
start
That's
looking.
if all the ducks stand or enroll, you know, and that never happens.
So to make this one big complete package motion, we're gonna proceed with the 6th officer, find the funding to do so, and don't have an SRO program, and allow the chief to start building an eligibility list.
And when Amber has a heart attack, we wanna make sure that Gus is aware and has an ambulance on standby.
All right, and that was made
And
by
outside the
Jake,
window.
and it was seconded by Casey. Do you need a roll call? Do
I
you?
would
Yes.
do a roll call.
Please.
Okay, wait a minute. Okay, he's not here. Havoc,
Yes.
Dashlet,
Yes.
Swedberg,
Yes.
Hoare,
Yes.
Lautenbach,
Yes.
Schmidt,
Yes.
Mehring.
Yeah.
Motion carries then. Okay. And are we on to the next meeting?
No,
Oh, maybe yes.
we have,
Closed session?
a closed session to discuss.
No, she was right.
She's
Next
just saying
meeting.
the next meeting.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, I thought you were going to the next meeting.
no.
Sorry, Madam Mayor.
No. So, our next meeting is now scheduled for March 21st at 4 PM. Is that okay with everybody?
You want these back?
I do not need them back, but if you don't want them, just leave them up there, we'll get them picked up.
Okay. Okay, if everybody's okay with that, that's when our next meeting will be. We don't need to do motions or anything. Anybody that has an agenda item that needs to be on the meeting, get that to Aaron or Matt. And then we're gonna go on to number 12, the motion to go into closed session.
Motion to go into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin statute 19.851C, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility. This is in regards to the public services laborer new hire.
Could I get that motion to go in?
That's a roll call?
Yes.
I need a motion. Who made the motion?
So move.
Motion made by Dashlet, seconded by
Second.
Boer. And now a roll call. Schmidt.
Yes.
Lautenbach.
Yes.
Swedberg.
Yes.
Boer.
Yes.
Pavik.
Yes.
Dashlet.
Yes.
Mehring.
Yes.
You're doing good. Keep it up, man.
Actually, while we are going into closed session, I'm gonna pick those up that I handed out from everybody, just because our employees' hours are all on there, not that anybody would go take them and deliver them anywhere, but there's holidays and other days that really are germane to the general public.